Hello. Today I'm going to give you everything you need to raise a carefree, social, obedient canine companion. It's become a bit of a trend on YouTube. Dog trainer gets a puppy, documents the journey, and we all follow along. There's a bit of a problem there. We rarely see how those dogs actually turn out. More often than not, they disappear into the void or worse, they grow up to be a reactive, anxious mess. And if you've been following their advice step by step, then your puppy might be heading in the same direction. But what if there was a dog trainer with the finished product?
A dog so stable, so neutral, so social, so obedient, and my God, so handsome. And what if that trainer had all the proof to back it up? Oh, wait.
Meet Stark, and as it happens, at the time of posting this video, it's his 3rd birthday. Now, I might be biased, he is my dog, but I reckon anyone that's met him would back me up when I say he's pretty damn cool. Let's step outside and go and see him. Now, Stark's done some seriously impressive stuff. He's got the titles, the trial field skills, and the bite work to prove it. But that's not what today's about. Because the best thing about him, in my opinion, it's how easy it is to live with him. He's social with dogs, people, children. He's confident. He's super affectionate, and most importantly, he's happy and safe. And no, he's not some sort of robotic, overtrained machine. If I wanted that,
A few moments later.
I would have got one of these instead. Let's make him do his thing. There you are. Heel! Oh. Good boy, Stark. What's that? Naughty boy. Oh, God. Sorry. Stark is the kind of dog you want to live with. He's chilled at home, he's fun to be around, and somehow he's got fans all over the world. But if you hadn't guessed it already, I'm probably his biggest fan. So today I want to share the most important lessons, concepts, and advice for raising the perfect puppy. Now, of course, genetics play a role here. Sometimes we're dealt with a more difficult hand than we'd like. But if you follow what I'm about to share, you'll be giving yourself and your puppy the best possible start. Oh, and even if you don't have a puppy, a lot of this advice will apply to your older dog, so you might want to stick around. I almost said best paw forward, but yeah, best not. Okay, first up, the critical learning period. I've talked about this one countless times before, but honestly, it might be the most important lesson when raising a puppy. From 6 to 16 weeks, your dog is like a sponge, soaking up the world around them. And if we fail to introduce them to everything we expect them to tolerate as an adult, we're just setting ourselves up for extra work and headaches later on down the line. But here's the thing, socialization isn't about throwing your puppy into every situation and hoping for the best. There's a key concept you need to understand to avoid making crucial mistakes here.
When you have a puppy, not have a puppy, buy a puppy from a breeder because you can't give birth to a puppy, they're gonna fall somewhere on this scale. And there's different interim steps between all of these, but essentially they're either going to be like neutral and you've won the dog training lottery and you've got a neutral puppy. They're going to be a little bit nervous, they're going to be introverted, or they might be hypersocial. So we see a lot of, for example, Italian greyhounds that are genetically quite nervous, and then we see a lot of, I don't know, Labradors that are more hypersocial. And like I said, if they're a neutral disposition, then that's great. We can put a little bit of a number over each one of these. So our neutral dog has a value towards other dogs of 0. Our hypersocial maybe +10. Our nervous dog -10. And so it's our duty to try and get a read on this nice and early and make sure that we're trying to bring things back in towards neutral as much as we possibly can. The hypersocial dog, they're going to run up to other dogs, they're going to get frustrated on the lead because they seem other dogs as too valuable. And the nervous dogs, they might become defensive, they might bark, lunge and growl, or they might not just be comfortable in their own skin, and that's gonna create problems later on down the line. So neutrality is key. We don't want to hide our dogs from other dogs. We never want them to be isolated from other dogs, because if that'll cause a problem with the hypersocial dog, if dogs are really novel, then it's going to increase the value of other dogs and increase that frustration. So we want our puppy to meet other dogs. Same with our nervous dogs. They need to like get used to being around other dogs. They need to get used to acclimatize to other dogs, because they're gonna probably interact with other dogs at some point in the future. Because of, you know what it's like, you take your dog for a walk and there's a dog on every corner, every other house. We're not going to do that with puppy parties. And why? Because of puppy parties are going to make a nervous dog more nervous, because they're going to force them into a bunch of social situations they don't want to be in. And it's going to make a hypersocial dog even more hypersocial, because if worst case scenario for him, he has a whale of a time and other dogs are even better. So we want to introduce our puppy to older, more stable dogs that aren't going to perpetuate either one of these issues, so they can go, hey, dogs, they are fine, they're safe, but boring. If anything, I would prefer my dog to be slightly on the hypersocial scale, so I can use control and motivation to bring him back, bring his attention back towards me. And so because of later on down the line, if he does have an aversive experience with another dog, or another dog charges him or whatever, well, if he's truly neutral, then that aversive experience could bring him down to a little bit of a negative, and I can start introverting him. So I like my puppy to kind of sit around here. For example, Stark, he is actually social, like hypersocial towards other dogs, but he would prefer to interact with me. And that's why play is important. That's why food work's important. That's why training is important. So a lot of people do aim for like totally neutral, but if we swing towards the hypersocial side, that's probably a safer bet. So having our dog interact with other dogs isn't a bad thing, as long as it's not the main source of fun and fulfillment. Like the mistake I made with my older dog, I went to the park every day, let him off lead, let him just dog park, let him run around with the dogs. That was his main source of fun. So then when that was stripped away from him on a regular walk with me, boring old dad, that would induce a lot of frustration, right? Worst case scenario, he might have had a fight at the dog park and that might have made him more nervous or aggressive. No to puppy parties, yes to older dogs, yes to meeting other dogs, yes to even sometimes playing with other dogs, as long as it's not the dog's main form of fun. Nervous dog, make sure we're meeting older dogs that aren't going to be too pushy with them. This is a little bit harder if your dog's falling on this side, but they do have to meet dogs. They do have to get used to dogs and hopefully start bringing them up this side of the scale.
Okay, next up, the concept of the release valve. When Stark was still finding his feet, I made sure to separate exercise from socialization or exposure. Specifically, I always exercised him before any socialization, and that was usually done with play, and here's why. I don't want to expose a puppy to the world while they're like a coiled spring ready to explode at the slightest movement, and with the Malinois that's practically a guarantee. At that age, their natural drives and desires are strong, so letting him express those instincts in a controlled way before exposure is absolutely critical. By giving them an outlet first, we set them up to experience the world in a calmer, more receptive state, rather than charging into every situation like a honey badger on Red Bull. Next up, the house line. If I'd relied purely on food to house train Stark in the early months, I would have ended up with a really hyperactive dog, like constantly in a state of anticipation, waiting for the next paycheck. And that's no way for a dog to live. And I really wish I'd realized this sooner with my older dogs, but the reality is using some sort of restriction, like a house line or a crate, is often the only reliable way to teach a puppy how to actually relax. I see so many people using a ton of food to teach settling, crate training, or place work. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a time and a place for that. But here's the problem. Anticipation is not relaxation. If your puppy is lying down and staring at you, waiting for the next reward, they're not learning actually how to switch off. Think of it like a toddler. We don't just ask them to take a nap. Sometimes we have to actually enforce rest with a cot or a pram. It's the same principle here. If you want a dog that can truly chill around the home, a house line and a crate aren't just helpful. In my opinion, they're essential. Next up, stop wrapping your puppy in bubble wrap. At some point, your puppy will experience something that scares them. It's inevitable. Stark did that too, and I'll show you exactly how that played out.
So there's someone else coming now. Obviously that freaked him out a little bit. The Rottweiler. I'd take him back if he was a Rottweiler.
But what I really want to stress here is how durable dogs actually are, unless we raise them wrapped in bubble wrap. When things get tough, it's easy to overcompensate, to coddle, to try and shield them from every uncomfortable experience. But in most cases, fear in dogs is a mile wide but an inch deep. The moment they actually step in, they realize how silly they're being. And with that comes confidence, the confidence to explore more, try more, and ultimately endure more. So instead of tiptoeing around challenges, we need to guide our puppies through them, because resilience isn't something you teach, it's something they develop by overcoming challenges one at a time. Okay, this one's a big one. No biting ever. Might be a little bit controversial, but this is my take. I actually remember the first time Stark tried to nip me or bite me or mouth me or whatever you want to call it. I even remember where I was. I was sat on the sofa, minding my own business, watching Desperate Housewives, when suddenly he launched himself off his bed like a tiny little meat missile. And he must have thought, hey, I wonder what happens if I bite Dad. Maybe he'll play. Spoiler alert. I didn't play. And I'll be honest, this is something I'm really passionate about. You see so many dogs that are incredibly mouthy as puppies and are inadvertently rewarded for it. They then go on to use their mouths to get what they want in adolescence and then in adulthood, and it just creates a plethora of problems. And so the moment Stark tried to bite me, I took him by the scruff of his cheek, told him no, really changed my demeanor, and I give him a timeout. And yes, you can give your puppy a timeout. They're not going to melt. Now, I know some people will be up in arms about this, but here's the reality. When a puppy comes into your home, they will sometimes test you. They're going to try and figure out if you're more like mum and dad or another littermate. Let me tell you, from my experience, mum and dad respond very differently to biting than perhaps your dog's siblings might do. The problem is I see way too many behavioral issues stemming from puppies who think their owners are actually littermates. Ultimately, it's your dog, the choice is yours, but do you want to be like mum and dad, or do you want to risk your puppy thinking you're a littermate? Next up, crate training, sleep regulation. Again, much like toddlers, puppies are terrible at recognizing when they're tired, and that is completely normal. But here's where things start to go downhill. So, puppy gets tired, puppy fights the tiredness with more energy, owner assumes puppy needs more play, more stimulation, puppy gets even more tired, puppy gets agitated, and suddenly they're hanging off our sleeves like a tiny velociraptor. And we've got no idea what went wrong. And this is why crate training is so important. The crate to your puppy is what a cot is to a toddler. It's not just about confinement, it's about advocating for their rest. Because if they don't get enough sleep, their cognitive development massively suffers. And that's not just a minor issue. It can have serious long-term effects on your dog's behavior. In fact, chronic fatigue is one of the biggest contributors to behavioral issues in dogs. So making sure your puppy is getting the right amount of quality sleep is not just important, it's absolutely essential. Oh, and while you're here, if you want a free puppy guide with a sleep schedule included, the link's in the description. Toilet training, the ensuite trick. All right, this one's a bit unconventional, but I want you to hear me out, because when I'm sleep deprived, I'm not at my best. Toilet training is all about giving your puppy frequent opportunities to go. Before and after food, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, you get the idea. And I always do this on the lead. Why? Because if left to their own devices, puppies tend to think toilet time means eat leaves and stones time, chase their tail time, bark at the neighbor's dog time, do the zoomies around the garden time. Anyway, not piss time. But the real question is, what about overnight? Do you wake up for them? Do you let them scream the house down? Or do you set an alarm, shuffle out of bed like a zombie every few hours? Well, here's what I did. And yeah, for a dog trainer, it's not exactly textbook, but like a dog, I don't function well on zero sleep. Okay, so what I did is I used a crate divided into two sections, one for Stark's bed and one for the other, puppy pad. Yep, guilty. Dog trainer using a puppy pad. But before you start throwing rotten tomatoes at me, let me explain why. Until about 15 or 16 weeks old, most puppies can't hold it overnight. So you've got two options. You've got one, let them scream the house down until they wake you up. That's going to set a bad precedent, in my opinion. And two, you're going to set an alarm and drag yourself out of bed multiple times a night. And I chose option 3. I gave Stark his little own ensuite. Then, when I did expect him to hold it, at around 16 weeks, I popped a divider in the crate to block off the pad area. And as he got bigger, I gradually moved that divider down, making sure he had enough space to stretch out, but not enough for him to turn the other side and into his own personal bathroom. And just like that, he was toilet trained, all with 3 a.m. toilet trips from me. You might call it lazy, I call it efficient. Train smarter, not harder. Okay, next up, don't make your dog a kitchen world champion. What the hell am I on about? Let me explain. We see it all the time, dogs that can spin, twirl, play dead, paw, roll over, all in the comfort of their own home, but everything falls apart the second they step outside. Fun fact, Stark didn't actually know the sit command until he was 1 year old, and yet here he is now proficient in multiple disciplines. You've really bigged this dog up. You better make him look good. Why? Because I focused on what actually matters first. I mean, you got play, place training, crate training, recall. and obviously there's socialization. Because here's the thing, your role isn't to create a dog that can perform monkey tricks in the kitchen. Your role is to create a social, handler-focused companion, one that can switch off when needed and come away from distractions when told. Not a performing monkey. And you might be surprised to learn that teaching paw, roll over, and play dead does absolutely nothing to help with that. So before you get carried away with all the tricks, nail the essentials. Everything else, that can come later, I promise. Okay, another one I've drummed on about in the past, but it's super important. I know, I sound like a broken record at this point, but if you're out there drizzling salmon oil and topping your dog's kibble with capers and sprinkling cheese on top just to get your dog to eat their food, then guess what? You're going to create a really fussy dog. And that's a huge problem when you step outside, you try to practice recall, or you want your dog to focus on you around distractions. And because suddenly, if you're not waving around a Michelin star meal, your dog sticks up two fingers and goes and rolls in fox shit instead. So keep it simple from day one. Get into the habit of using their kibble for training every single meal. And yes, we make sure it's a very high quality one. Stop feeding your dog cardboard. And this builds a solid baseline for work ethic. So when the distractions ramp up, your dog isn't turning their nose up at anything else less than caviar. Because I promise you, eventually, even that won't be good enough. Next up is a fundamental behavioral law that you must be aware of if you want to raise a well-rounded puppy. And that is that repetition drives behavior, both good and bad. Ultimately, all behavior is neutral to our dog. They never see it as good or bad, just something that serves a function. Belgian Malinois are smart enough to pick up good habits, but just as quick to pick up bad habits. And this probably goes for your dog at home too. That's why I make sure I'm never putting my dog or my puppy in a situation where he can't give me the behavior I actually want. For example, let's say you've got the whole family coming around and your goal is for your dog to stay calm. If you let him charge in, jump all over everyone and go absolutely feral until he eventually gets bored, then guess what? That behavior is the one you're reinforcing. He's not going to magically get bored of it. Instead, you need to put actual parameters in place. And that might mean putting him on a leash and giving him a little bit of a pop when he tries to jump up, or using food to get his attention on you, or maybe giving him a place command. Or what I did was just kept Stark in his crate until he got bored. We calmed down and then let him out when he was in a much calmer state of mind. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Not that I'm actually suggesting that you do. But please don't fall into the trap of thinking that your dog will grow out of bad behavior. If it's being reinforced and they're getting something out of it, then they'll only get better at it. Just remember, practice makes permanent, not perfect. Listen, I know it can feel like there's so much you need to get right when raising a puppy, but honestly, you don't need hours of training every single day. And your puppy doesn't need to be some sort of obedient superstar by 6 months old. The important bit is it's not about what you train, it's actually about what you avoid. The biggest wins comes from sidestepping the mistakes that make life harder for you later down the line. So that's what this video has been about. If you want to see more of this handsome devil, then hit subscribe and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.